She hangs upside down, the leg cuffs digging into the skin of her ankles, making her bleed as she writhes. The blood travels down her legs, adding color to her white panties and tank top. She tries to scream, but there's tape tight over her mouth. Her sweat-stringy black hair dangles toward the concrete floor between her arms. She's been hanging there so long that she no longer has the strength to keep her arms up around her body. My left hand shakes as I grab her wrist. I feel like I'm going to be sick as I inch the garden shears forward, pressing her pinky finger into the curved V between the two blades. I shake my head, asking myself what I'm doing. I want to scream, but I'm just as mute as the woman. Only there's no tape over my mouth. There's no forcing me to do this. Is there? Her eyes are faintly familiar. Do I know this young woman? Did I bring her here? I must have. There's no one else here. Just me and her. My fingers tighten on the shears, as if someone has a hand over mine and is closing the tool, cutting into the skin of the woman's pinky. But mine is the only hand there. It's covered in a black latex glove, but it's my hand. I'm doing this. I'm doing it, and I don't know why. With a quick movement, I clamp down on the shears. The woman screams louder against the tape as her pinky separates and falls to the ground. Blood drains out of the stump. I laugh, but the sound quickly turns to a prolonged sob. I want to tell her I'm sorry, but I can't. Instead, I shift my position, placing the shears over the crest of the woman's nose. She jerks, pulling her head away, swaying from her upside-down position. I reach out and grab the back of her neck, steadying her. Those eyes. I place the shears over her nose again, and I clamp down on them. I wake up in bed, sweating, muscles twitching in my legs. My head jerks involuntarily as my muscles spasm painfully. I know it was a nightmare, but I still look down at my hands. I'm not wearing gloves. There's no pair of shears nearby and no vaguely familiar woman hanging upside down. Just my bedroom and the upstairs unit of an old brownstone in the best part of town I can afford on my detective salary. At least it's quiet at. I grab my phone and look at the time. 3:42 in the morning. I hear the faint sound of a car going by outside. Slightly louder is the sound of my downstairs neighbor's television. She leaves it on most nights. It doesn't bother me. She's a lonely old lady. Her only friends are the ones that time travel into her house as pixels on her TV. If it helps her sleep, I'm not going to complain. Like I said, it's quiet. For this city, anyway. I sit up on the edge of my bed, my feet on the cool hardwood floor. My leg muscles are still twitching. It's been happening a lot lately. Something's wrong with me. I don't think it's a coincidence that the twitching started happening around the same time these strangely vivid nightmares started haunting me. My body is trying to tell me something. Standing up to walk around a little, I promise myself that I'll make a doctor's appointment first thing in the morning. But I know I won't. It's a promise I've been making for days, and one I have yet to keep. I really don't want to know what's wrong with me. Maybe because I think I deserve these nightmares. Maybe because I'm just scared. Probably a little both. I'd need a psychiatrist to get to the bottom of it, and I'm sure as hell not doing that. The only sessions I ever had with the shrink were mandated by the department after I killed a serial murderer who'd racked up a double-digit body count. Dubbed the Crescent Killer by the media for his calling card, a crescent carved into the forehead of each victim. He was active for nearly 2 years before I put him down for good. And I had no qualms about that shooting. The first, and so far only one of my career. Yeah, despite what you see on TV, most cops aren't getting into many gunfights in their careers, especially not detectives. But that didn't stop the department from forcing me to see a shrink. It probably didn't help that I told a reporter I would have shot the bastard, even if he hadn't been armed. Which he had been. That made front-page news, and the department suddenly had egg on their face. I'd said the quiet part out loud. but I meant it. The guy was a sicko and needed to be put down. So that one didn't bother me. What bothered me was how goddamn long it had taken me to find the bastard. What bothered me was how many people he'd killed, men and women, before I finally blew his brains out. What bothered me was that I couldn't save those 12 people. But I figured that, ultimately, it was a good thing. If I wasn't bothered by it, then I would have to walk away for good. I needed to be bothered by all the people I hadn't saved. I used it as fuel. So maybe the nightmares and twitches were just side effects of my anger. If that was the case, I supposed I could harness them. I just wished I could get more restful sleep. Eventually, the muscles in my legs calm down. I get back in bed and look up at the air vent on my ceiling. I stare at it for a long time before my eyes drift closed and I fall back asleep. It's mid-morning as my partner Paul Vargas and I pull up to the warehouse. Uniforms are already crawling all over the place, securing the scene and drinking coffee. Paul and I are next up on rotation, so this one is ours. We got the call shortly after 10 o'clock. Apparently, an anonymous tip came in around 9 and a uniform came to check it out. What he found wasn't pretty. After parking and gearing up, Paul and I sign in on the crime scene security log. Once that's done, we walk into the warehouse. Ari Helson, the CSI team leader for the scene, debriefs us as we come in. We exchange pleasantries before Ari gets down to it.
"She's in the basement,"
he says.
"It's a mess."
"This place up for sale or something?" Paul asks, noting the large empty space.
"Slated for demolition,"
Ari says.
"Last owners put a gym in here, but they couldn't keep it going. I guess they sold it to some major developer who's gonna knock it down and put a Starbucks or some shit here."
We move to the back of the space and head down some stairs into the basement. As soon as we move through the door and reveal the scene, I freeze. There's a woman with stringy black hair hanging upside down from a crossbeam. She's wearing blood-stained white panties and a tank top. Her right pinky finger has been cut off, along with several others, and her nose has been destroyed, as though cut by a pair of shears. Paul looks at me closely.
"You all right, Roger?" "I said it was bad,"
Ari says.
"I guess I could have been more specific."
"No," I say. "It's fine. Just wasn't ready for it, I guess." Jesus. It's not possible, I tell myself as I get closer. There's no way it's her. No way. But it is her. It's the very same woman I dreamed about last night. How could that be? It couldn't. Not unless I was here. Not unless it was me who did this to her. There's no other explanation. I'm so lost in thought that I hardly remember driving to Lilith's diner. I look up, seeing the neon sign of the old school diner as I approach. I've been coming to Lilith's for dinner after my shift for years. It's not often that I have the energy to make dinner once my workday is over. And I like the food at Lilith's. I'm a man of habit, and there's no reason to fix what isn't broken. So although I'm not hungry, I stop at the diner and walk in. The place closes at midnight, so I have an hour and a half before I need to be gone. Eating won't take more than 30 minutes. It never does. The place is about a third full of people of all kinds. As is my habit, I take a seat on a stool facing the kitchen. The cook, a friendly guy with a shaved head and big ears, looks through the food delivery window and gives me a wave with his spatula.
"Hey, Raj,"
he says.
"How you doing?"
I swipe a hand across my face.
"All right, Jay. You?" "Not too bad. What are you having? I'll get a head start on it."
The server tonight is a pretty college girl named Andrea. She's busy with an older couple at one of the booths. No need to bother her when I can just give Jay my order. She'll still get a nice tip from me. She's a sweet girl. I give Jay my order, a bacon cheeseburger with onion rings, and then stare down at the Formica countertop. I said nothing about the coincidence at the crime scene. I was afraid to say anything. Afraid that I would be arrested right then and there. Although that was ridiculous. They knew me. They knew I wasn't a murderer. that I couldn't do that to a woman. But they would at least think I was crazy, that I was losing it. Maybe they would put me on a leave of absence. I couldn't have that. I needed to figure out what the hell was going on. Is it possible that I can see into the future? That I have some special gift to see specific crimes as they happen? The notion almost makes me laugh. It's so ridiculous. But what else is there? The time of death was somewhere around midnight. What if I was sleepwalking and I had killed that young woman? Then I went home, cleaned up, and went to bed, only to have the memories invade my dreams? It's almost more far-fetched than the idea of special mental powers. I've never had a history of sleepwalking. I've lived with several women over the years. They would have told me if I was walking around in the middle of the night. Besides, it surely took some serious planning and execution to do what had been done to that woman. There must be some kind of logical explanation. There was no way to identify the young woman at the scene. The fingerprint reader didn't come up with anything, which only means she hadn't been arrested before. I just hope we can identify her, which will help me conduct a proper investigation. And if it leads back to me, so be it. If I am the one who did it, I need to be put away. I need psychiatric help, because anyone who tortures and murders a person and doesn't remember doing it has something seriously wrong with their head. Andrea comes over and chats with me for a bit, getting me a cup of iced tea. My burger comes out soon after. After the first bite, I realize I am pretty hungry. I finish the burger and most of the fries, pay, and head home. It happens again. This time, the woman is blonde. She's not hanging upside down either. She's been bound awkwardly over a sharp metal spike sticking up out of the floor. She's hunched over the metal spike, her arms bound to one side of it, her legs to the other. She doesn't have enough play in the binds to stand up straight, nor does she have enough to maneuver her body to either side of it. There's only an inch of room between the tip of the spike and her chest, so she has to crouch there, bent over the spike, holding herself up with bent legs so she's not impaled on it. The straps on her legs are affixed to her thighs. They're very specific, with 4 different lines going down to anchors in the concrete floor, preventing her from moving her legs more than a couple of inches in any direction. The only way she can go is down, directly over the spike. I sit and watch her from the side as her legs shake. There's no tape over her mouth, and she pleads with me to let her go. Tears fall from her face as she pleads and screams. Every part of me wants to stand up and go over to her, to free her from the binds. But I can't move. I'm trapped inside my own body. Suddenly, her shaking legs give way. She sinks down, the spike puncturing her flesh just under the place where her ribs meet. Screaming, she lifts again, pulling herself off the spike. It only went in an inch or two. She stays up like that for another 30 seconds before sinking back down onto the spike. She manages to use what little strength is left in her legs to keep it from puncturing her too deeply. Finally, I get up and walk over to her. There's still a chance to save her. She's not injured that badly yet. I reach down and shove her toward the floor onto the spike. She convulses. Blood pours out of her mouth. I shove her again, and the spike tears through the skin of her back, just to the right of her spine. I move back over to my seat and watch the last moments of her life fade away. The morning comes on me like a tsunami. I'm suddenly awake and sitting up in bed, breathing heavily. Sunlight streams through the blinds. Muscles in my legs are twitching again, and I don't feel rested at all. I tell myself I'll purchase and set up a camera in my room to see if I actually leave tonight. Or should I just turn myself in? I probably should, but I won't. I'm not just afraid of what would happen to me in prison, but I still can't believe I'm the one doing these things. It doesn't seem real. After drinking a cup of coffee as I get ready for work, I head out of my apartment and down the stairs. The door to my downstairs neighbor's apartment opens just as I'm passing it. Mrs. Stein pokes her white-haired head out and smiles at me. She's not just my neighbor. but she's also my landlord. Shortly after her husband died, she had the brownstone converted from a single unit to a double to provide a little extra income and help her keep up with property taxes.
Hey, Mrs. Stein,
I say. Her smile fades.
are you okay? You look exhausted.
I'm about to answer, but then I ask a question of my own.
Have you heard me leaving in the middle of the night at all lately?
Mrs. Stein looks puzzled.
No, but I'm a heavy sleeper these days. Plus, I leave my TV on at night. The noise helps me get to sleep. Have you been trying not to wake me when you leave at night?
Seeing her assumption, I shake my head and then quickly turn it into a nod.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't disturbing you. Not me,
She said.
Okay, well, good. I'll see you later. Wait, Roger. There was something I wanted to ask you.
Mrs. Stein pauses for a moment, trying to remember. Then she snaps her papery fingers together.
That's right. Have you seen a man from an insulation company come by recently?
I shake my head.
No, not while I've been here.
She purses her lips.
A man came by last week and said he would give me a free attic inspection for the half attic up there.
She points to the attic access panel in the ceiling at the top of the stairs, just outside my apartment door.
He was up there for a while, but when he came down, he said the insulation looked fine. Still, I asked him for a quote, and he hasn't gotten back to me. I doubt that insulation is any good anymore. I don't think we've added to it or replaced it since we bought this place in the 60s.
I'm having a hard time focusing, thinking about my nightmare from last night.
Yeah, no. Sorry, Mrs. Stein. I haven't seen anyone. Did he leave you a card? No, he didn't. And I can't remember the name of the company he said. It was on his shirt, but I just can't remember. Maybe call another company? I'm sure another one could do a free estimate. A second opinion, you know? You're right, I suppose,
She says.
I guess that's what I'll do. Just wanted to ask if you'd seen anyone like that.
I say goodbye to my landlady and head to the office. I'm not even halfway there when my phone rings. It's my partner, Paul.
Got another one that might be related to the one we caught yesterday.
He says, and gives me an address.
Text it to me, will you? I didn't sleep well last night.
Sure thing. Oh, and Roger? We got an ID on the Jane Doe from yesterday. Her name's Emily Chilton.
A great buzz fills my head at the mention of that name. I suddenly realize why I recognized her in my dream and at the scene. I know her. The shock is so great that I hardly notice the car stopped at the red light ahead of me. I slam on my brakes at the last moment, coming within inches of rear-ending the car ahead. I hang up without saying another word and put the phone down. Emily Chilton. Jesus Christ, I know her. Knew her. But the last time I saw her, she was a teenager, just on the cusp of womanhood. She was a witness to one of the Crescent Killer murders. She'd seen one of the victims get into a dark SUV the night before the victim was found dead. I had interviewed her twice. She never had to testify because I'd killed the guy, preventing the need for a trial. It can't be a coincidence. It can't be. Jesus, am I really doing this? As I head to the fresh crime scene, I already know what I'll find there. A young blonde woman impaled on a metal spike, her arms and legs bound to anchors in the floor. And by the time I get to the scene, I'm pretty sure I know the name of the victim. Another Crescent Killer witness. I recognize the dead blonde girl impaled on the skin. I can't remember her name, but I recognize her. I don't tell Paul this. I don't tell anyone. I go through the motions. While Paul and I are talking to Ari Helson, he tells us that they found some physical evidence at yesterday's scene. A couple of hairs.
I put a rush on it,
He says.
okayed by the chief. He wants this thing wrapped up before the press realizes there's another serial killer on the loose. So we should have a hit soon. Could be something, could be nothing. We'll see. That's assuming this is a serial killer,
Paul says. Ari gives him an incredulous look.
It would be a pretty goddamn big coincidence if this wasn't the work of the same guy. He likes to torture them. and there's no sign of sexual assault. Gotta be a serial killer. What do you think, partner?
Paul asks.
You think it's the same guy?
I nod, staring at the gruesome scene. There's a lawn chair set nearby. It's where I sat and watched her die. So I nod and say,
Yeah, it's the same guy.
but I don't tell them that it's me, that I'm the one doing this. They'd probably think I was joking even if I did. I hardly believe it myself, but there seems to be no other explanation.
I gotta go,
I say.
I need to take care of something.
I leave quickly. Paul calls after me, but I don't answer. I rush out of the abandoned tenement building in which the crime took place and puke up my morning coffee in the alley. Then I get in my car and leave, driving with no destination in mind. My leg muscles start twitching again, and I think, not for the first time in my career, of putting a bullet in my brain. Only this time, the thought of suicide seems like a real possibility, a solution, maybe the only viable one. I want the files with the interviews and information pertaining to the two new victims, but I dare not go back to the precinct. Paul has been calling and texting me ever since I left the crime scene. I haven't picked up, but I've read several of the texts. He says that he'll cover for me, but he wants to know what's wrong. I don't blame him. We're partners. We talk about pretty much everything, but I can't tell him about this. If I decide to eat a bullet, I'll message him first, but I haven't yet decided that's what I'll do. There's something that I'm missing, something I'm not seeing. I arrive home after driving around for a couple of hours, thinking and not getting any closer to a solution. And I need to concentrate. I need to determine if it really is me who did these murders. Slamming my front door, I walk into my apartment and quickly go through my trash, looking for anything that would indicate to me I'd done the killings. I see no latex gloves, no zip ties to bound kidnapped women, no used duct tape. I find nothing out of the ordinary, nothing I don't remember throwing away. I check my clothes for bloodstains or scuffs or anything else I can't explain. Then again, I'm a cop. I know how all this works, and I could plan for that. Only the stupidest criminals hang on to incriminating evidence or dispose of it in their own trash. Pulling my clothes off down to my underwear, I check for scratches or any other signs that I've been gouged or hit or scraped during a struggle. There's nothing. I pull my pants and undershirt back on and sit down at my kitchen table. My legs are still twitching on and off. I pull out my phone and Google muscle twitches again, hoping to find some way to make them stop. It's unnerving, having your body do things that are out of your control. And it's also funny that a man who's contemplating suicide would search for a solution to something as relatively minor as muscle twitches. But deep down, I know that making the muscle twitches stop would be a small win. It would give me hope that I could fix whatever is wrong with me, whatever's been causing me to go out at night and kill and not consciously remember doing it. I scroll down, scanning the results for my search, when my eyes stop on something. My throat thickens as I hit the link to take me to the webpage. I scan the article once, quickly, and then read the crucial sections again. Could it be possible? I wonder. Could it? A knock on my front door tears my attention away from my train of thought.
Roger, it's Paul. We need to talk.
My partner. Something in his voice puts me on edge. I stand up and move toward the door.
It's not a good time.
I call.
Come back later.
There's a pause before Paul speaks again.
I can't do that, partner. I need you to open the door. And I need you to not have your weapon on you when you do it. We just need to sort some things out. We'll have you back home in no time, I'm sure.
My whole body goes hot.
What is it?
I ask, looking at my gun, which I set on the kitchen table when I stripped off my clothes to look for scratches.
The hairs at the scene?
I know that every detective is in the DNA database as a way to prevent crime scene contamination. So if they did find a couple of my hairs there, they could easily match it to my DNA.
Just open the door,
Paul says. I unlock the door and open it a crack. Paul is standing there with a couple of uniformed officers behind him.
I walked around that crime scene.
I say.
Maybe I pushed a hand through my hair and a couple of strands fell to the ground. Happens all the time.
Paul looks sick.
Roger, the hairs were in the victim's mouth.
I remember the duct tape over her mouth, several layers of it.
We also know that you interviewed both victims back when you were working the Crescent Killer case.
Paul says.
I'm sure it's not what it looks like, but we've still got to take you in, partner. We'll get this sorted out. I know you didn't kill those girls.
I glance back into my apartment, still thinking about what I read in the article just before Paul knocked. Then I open the door all the way and step out. Paul reaches for the handcuffs.
Is that really necessary?
I ask.
Sorry,
Paul says.
but it is. Well, at least cuff me in front, would you? Can you at least do me that favor?
Paul glances over his shoulder at the two uniforms. Their expressions don't change. They don't like this any more than Paul does.
Yeah, all right.
Paul says. I put my hands out and look up, breathing a heavy sigh as Paul puts one cuff around my left wrist. The attic access is there, above the landing outside my apartment. I recall my conversation with Mrs. Stein.
Holy shit!
I say, the piece is clicking.
Holy shit! I didn't do it! What?
Paul says, clicking the other cuff around my wrist.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to take you in.
I shake my head.
He's gonna do it again, Paul. He could be abducting her right now. Calm down. We'll sort this out at the station.
I nod and force myself to calm down, realizing what I have to do.
Okay,
I say.
okay. Good. Now give me your key so I can lock your apartment door.
We share a look. Both he and I know that I keep a handcuff key on my key ring.
Okay,
I say.
right pocket.
Paul steps toward me to reach into my pocket. Snapping my hands up, I shove Paul backward. He stumbles back into the two officers, but I don't stick around to see whether they all go down. I book it down the stairs and out of the brownstone, running as fast as I can. Paul screams at me to stop, and I know he's chasing me. But I know this neighborhood. This is my neighborhood, and I know he won't catch me. It's dark out when I step off the bus and look at the diner across the street. If I'm right, and I think I am, there's no way he'll know I'm onto him. He thought he could go up against me and win, and he almost did. But I solve puzzles for a living. And although I've never been as good at it as I want to be, I'm still pretty damn good. I don't have my phone. I left it in my apartment. And if I hadn't, I would have ditched it shortly after I ditched Paul and unlocked the cuffs with my handcuff key. But that doesn't mean I couldn't find a way to call my partner and tell him what I know. What I think I know. I could have found one of the few remaining payphones in the city, or I could have begged to borrow someone's cell phone. But I didn't. Because I want to take this bastard down myself, just like I took the Crescent Killer down 5 years ago. What has been happening to me has everything to do with that case. I just don't know how or why, but I'm about to find out. Unfortunately, I left my gun back at my apartment. I have a spare in my car, but I knew they would be watching it, so I didn't go back for it. I'll have to be careful. I'll have to make like everything is normal, which is why I waited until now to come to the diner. Coming in earlier than my normal time would have made him suspicious. The door dings as I walk into the place. Andrea is working, hurrying toward me with a couple of empty, food-smeared plates in her hands.
Hey, Raj. Jay'll get you started on your order, and I'll come back and get you a drink. I'll just be a minute.
She disappears into the kitchen through a door to the left of the pass-through window. Jay glances through the window.
Hey, Raj.
He says.
What'll it be tonight? Hey, Jay.
I say, taking my customary seat at the counter.
Give me a minute to think on it, will you? Sure. Just holler when you know.
Jay ducks his head down to deal with whatever food he's currently preparing. I study him for a moment, trying to remember if I ever saw him before he got hired on here. I remember he replaced the previous night shift cook after the guy was killed in a hit and run. As far as I know, they never caught the culprit. It's no coincidence. I know I'm staring at the culprit now. One more body I can put on him. Jay raises his eyes and I lower mine to the menu, pretending to read it. There are several people in the place, maybe 10. I can't draw this out. I need to end it quickly. I just don't know how to do it. Then it comes to me. Every time I order a burger, Jay has to duck away from the pass-through window to get the patty. If I'm remembering correctly, it never takes him more than 10 seconds. But 10 seconds is enough.
I think I'll just do a cheeseburger again tonight,
I say.
with a side of onion rings. You got it.
Jay ducks away from the window. I jump up from my seat and quickly maneuver into the space behind the counter, heading toward the door Andrea went through not long ago. I look for something to use as a weapon, but there's nothing good. I have to make this quick, so I settle for a coffee pot half full of hot coffee. Gripping the pot by the handle, I move through the door and into the kitchen, freezing as I see Jay standing with one hand wrapped around Andrea's chest, the other holding a knife to her throat. Stupid! I knew Andrea was back here. I should have waited.
Put the coffee down, Roger.
Jay says.
What are you doing, Jay?
Andrea asks, her voice choked with disbelief.
Shut up.
Jay says, digging the tip of the knife into her skin just enough to draw blood. The door behind me is closed. No one can see back here, not unless they look through the pass-through window. But none of the customers were anywhere close to that part of the diner.
I said put the coffee down. Okay,
I say, reaching the pot out and setting it on top of a low stainless steel fridge.
tell your cop friends to stay back or I kill her.
I open my mouth to say that there are no other cops here, but then I think better of it. I put a finger to my ear and say,
Did you hear that? Stay back. He's got a hostage.
I wait a moment and then nod.
They're not going to make a move.
I tell Jay.
We just don't want anyone to get hurt.
Andrea's eyes are pleading, but I keep mine fixed on Jay. I have to focus. It's the only way I'll save her.
How'd you figure it out?
He asks.
Did you find the stuff in the attic?
No, I say. It was the muscle twitches. Jay looks confused.
It's a side effect of the antipsychotic drug you've been slipping into my nightly meals,
I say.
But you don't take them, do you? Because you're not psychotic. Not in that sense.
Jay smiles.
Really? That's how you figured it out? Fucking muscle twitches?
Other side effects include nightmares, restless sleep, and suggestibility, I say.
But you're right. I never would have figured it out if my landlady hadn't mentioned your little visit about the insulation in the attic. That was what had all the pieces coming together. So what's up there? I'm guessing a camera that you used to see when I was asleep, and a speaker to describe the murders to me. How am I doing? You give me no credit, detective. I knew my voice wouldn't work. I couldn't risk you waking up and recognizing it. So I fed an AI program snippets of your voice recorded without your knowledge right here in the diner. So I had you describing the murders to you while you slept.
He laughs, amazed at his plan. And I have to admit, it almost worked. I thought I was going nuts.
But muscle twitches?
Jay continues.
I'm not even mad, really. That's impressive. Very impressive. You really are good at what you do. I just wish you wouldn't have killed Terry like you did. You could have avoided all this if you'd just arrested him. I couldn't let it go. Not after that.
Terry Nichols, the Crescent Killer.
You were his partner?
I ask. Jay smiles again.
You never thought there were two of us, did you? Hell, maybe it's better that you did kill Terry. He probably would have ratted me out. But I loved that man. We were brothers. More than that, we had a connection. We had a bond. Something you wouldn't understand. So I couldn't let it go. I tried, but I couldn't.
I think I do understand, I say.
You see, I do have a partner. His name is Paul Vargas, and he's pointing a gun at the back of your head right now.
I let my eyes flick over his shoulder, toward the back door of the restaurant. Paul isn't there. He's probably still out looking for me, but Jay takes the bait. He turns his head to look over his shoulder, causing the knife to come slightly away from Andrea's neck. I grab the coffee pot and lunge forward, screaming for Andrea to duck. She does, just before I smash the pot into the side of Jay's face. The man still manages to slice a shallow line up the side of her head before she's clear, but it's better than the alternative. I toss the remnants of the pot down as Jay stumbles backward. Andrea throws herself out of the way, and I chase Jay as he turns to run. He slices at me with the knife, crying out with one hand to the side of his bloody head. I jump back, but the blade still cuts through my shirt and into my chest. He makes it out the back door and into the alley, where he turns around and slices at me again, this time I jump back, and he misses me altogether.
They'll be here any second,
I say.
Put the knife down if you don't want to end up like Terry.
I press the finger to my ear again.
We're in the back alley. Subject is armed and dangerous. I repeat, armed and dangerous. Okay,
He says, looking around as he drops the knife.
okay.
He gets to his knees and puts his hands behind his head, smiling as he does it.
Arrest me, detective. Arrest me.
I force him down onto his face and then cuff his hands behind his back, using Paul's cuffs since I left mine at home along with my phone and gun.
Arrest me,
Jay says again.
so I can do the interviews and the book deal and listen to the true crime podcasts about me. I'm the real Crescent Killer after all.
There's a smile in his voice as he speaks.
You've got to be the biggest moron alive,
I say to him.
You think I ever planned on bringing you in alive? Why do you think you don't hear any sirens right now? Why do you think there are no police swarming into this alley?
Standing up and placing one foot on his ass, I grab the handcuffs with one hand and wrench his arms up toward the sky until I hear tearing from his shoulders as his arms dislocate. He screams into the dirty alley floor. There's a puddle of trash juice in a nearby pothole, and I drag him over to it, shoving his face into the foul-smelling water. I slam one foot down on the back of his head, stomping his face into the puddle again and again until the dirty water goes red with blood and Jay stops thrashing. Breathing heavily, I move over to sit down at the alley wall and stare at the second man I've killed. And something funny occurs to me. I guess I am a serial killer now, in a way. And you know what? I don't mind one bit. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.